One of the biggest concerns that I've noticed about asset protection, and one of the things that frustrates me the most, is when people learn a new concept and then they don't do it. That is a big push for the 3-day summit. And so, but I've also questioned a lot of people why they didn't. Well, they got home from the summit and they started talking to their friends and family, and they're going, well, there's a lot of unscrupulous people doing LLCs, and people are asking me why I'm doing this. And the question that I've learned to respond with, well, would it be okay if you protected your home? So let's say you hired me for a second and I come in, look at your home, and you wanted better home security. So would it be okay if I suggested maybe some better window locks and maybe some door locks and maybe an alarm system? That might be a good idea, and a home safe, fireproof, that we can store your important documents. What if I maybe suggested a little bit better outdoor lighting? If you get a basement, let's put some window well covers on. Keep people from crawling in and hiding behind the shrubs in your window wells. What about a neighborhood watch? Look, I understand that we have an obligation to help homeless people. Got that. But that doesn't mean you have to keep them in your home. Your first obligation is to protect your home and your family, is it not? Could you go overboard with your home security? Absolutely. Most of us don't need an alligator moat and gun turret and razor wire, and we don't need hovering F-16s. I want you to be wise, prudent, responsible in what you do. Yes, you have an obligation to help homeless people, but take care of your family and then go out and help the world. But take care of your family first. Just don't overkill this. The same principles apply, I believe, in protecting yourself. Let's say you called me up and I say, okay, let's understand where you're at. And with that little understanding, I go, you've got minor children. You really ought to have a last will and testament with guardianship, because that's probably the most important estate planning decision you make. Who raises those kids if mom and dad aren't there? So that comes out of the last will and testament. You probably ought to have a power of attorney, a medical power of attorney, a financial power of attorney, and make it spring into action if you're incapacitated. Powers of attorney end at death, but they start usually at incapacitation. What if I'm in a coma for 3 weeks? Who's going to fill out the tax return? And who's going to, I don't know, banking powers and whatever, medical decisions? What if healthcare directives? What about revocable living trusts so that my kids don't inherit a mess? What about that? If you've got a business, or if you can create a business and there's significant tax savings involved, let's maybe suggest a corporation. If not, then that's okay. And don't overkill this. You might start off as a sole proprietorship. Maybe an LLC taxed as a sole proprietorship if there's liability. Maybe it's an S Corp that graduates to a C Corp. Whatever it is, we're looking for tax savings and corporate shields for you. What if we isolate this activity, this rental property, from this commercial property, and we use separate LLCs? In your state, maybe a family limited partnership might be in order. The question is, could you overkill this? Well, yes. I don't want you to overkill this. If the only thing, you walk out of this class and go, I need an estate plan, then let's do that. If you walk out of the class and go, I could really save some money on taxes, then you really need a corporation or an LLC taxed as a corporation, because that's where the major tax benefits are. If we can isolate assets, yeah, don't overkill this. And I've seen legal structures that just astound me. I've seen legal structures to protect a $5,000 bank account, and they have a corporation to get all the tax benefits, and then a holding company, and then the trust. And don't overkill. Just remember to be, what are the 3 key words? Be wise, prudent, responsible. And I honestly believe it goes beyond you've got the right to do it. I believe you have the responsibility to do it. Let's say I've got a business and I don't know, I'm a dentist. Okay. But I've got some employees and I have a responsibility to them to provide a good, safe, and working environment. Now, I've got a couple rental properties. Do I not have the responsibility to my employees over here that if something goes wrong with my rental properties, that they still keep a job? And don't I have a responsibility to the people that rent from me? That regardless what happens in my practice, I've isolated this activity and they will always have a good, safe, affordable place to live. Yes, I do. And don't I have a responsibility then to my family that no matter what happens in my dental practice or my rental properties, they still have a home to live in, and the retirement account is safe and growing and doing whatever. Not only do you have the right to do asset protection, but as your wealth grows, you've got an increased responsibility to do asset protection. Remember the goal of our entire legal system. Sometimes I get in trouble because it appears that I'm dogging our legal system, and there's things wrong with it. There's no doubt. But the whole goal of the legal system from our founding fathers was to restore the victim. That's why we have a legal system. But even though that is the goal, you have to understand it's not a perfect legal system. It's not always about what's right. And you have to understand that with a lawsuit. Take divorce. And it's not always about right and wrong. Sometimes it is about who has the most money, and it's who has the best attorney, and who's the loudest and most aggressive. Sometimes it's about who's the best liar. Sometimes it's about who's willing to wait. I need assets right now. No, I don't care. I'm gonna starve you out until you actually come to your knees. No, don't want to do that. Sometimes it's about who has the best documents and the best records. Well, I remember that doesn't matter. It wasn't documented. Sometimes children are pulled in as pawns. And I'll give you this if you give me this. Oh my gosh. It is not always about fairness. So keep that in mind, and knowing that divorce is a form of a lawsuit. And this has helped me, this little statement from John Adams, our founding father. The Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the government of any other. And if you don't mind me getting just a little religious with you, as our society becomes less and less religious, we have to understand that our legal system is going to be less and less effective. So what do? Well, we understand, first of all, it's not a perfect legal system, and then we work around that. If we had a perfect legal system, we wouldn't need asset protection, would we? But we don't have that. Sometimes we just say, or your accountant or your attorney says, we'll just carry more insurance. And I've seen people get in trouble because they have too much insurance. There's a big paradox with insurance in that the more you have, the bigger the target you become. Because a plaintiff's attorney or a contingency ambulance chaser type of attorney, they're going to go after the biggest, deepest pockets that they can. And if you've got a $10 million liability policy when you really needed maybe $500,000, you become a deep pocket and a target for lawsuits. If the goal of our legal system is to restore the victim, that also we need to incorporate that within our souls. We need to say, yeah, that's my goal too. As I'm setting up legal structures, my goal is to restore the victim. I want to be in a position to be able to do that. All right, so here's what I've learned, and this is as honest and blunt as I can be. After teaching this for a lot of years, here's the 4 steps I believe that should be ingrained in all of us. First of all, carry adequate insurance. Whatever that means, and I'll define that a little bit later in just a couple minutes. Stay in control of the assets, do the right thing, and then use personal assets if necessary. The best example that I can give you of this is an experience I had before I learned anything about asset protection. Our neighbor, we were down in Southern California. We'd lived there about 10 years. My wife's from there. And we were back living near her family. And I had a neighbor, had a cute little 18-year-old daughter. She just turned 18. She was a senior in high school. It was spring. She was bebopping around the neighborhood. She's a cute, fun, spunky little thing. But she wasn't real responsible. The second she turned 18, her dad put the car in her name, went down to DMV, put the title in her name. And I questioned him on that, going, she's fun and she's happy and she makes me smile, but she's not all that responsible. Why'd you do that? He says, I don't want the liability. I went, okay. And I didn't really understand that till about 3 weeks later. Again, senior year in high school, she's driving to high school, but the sun's in her eyes that she does not see the boy in the crosswalks until he's bouncing across her windshield. And after all is said and done, he misses the rest of his senior year. And at the end, the boy's family has an $80,000 medical bill. So they turned to the insurance company. They had minimum state insurance on that car, so that covered the first $30,000. And then they're going after the owner of the car. Well, the owner of the car was a girl who owned a backpack and a bicycle and a few pairs of earrings. They can't go after the parents. She's 18. The car was in her name. So what do? Well, they settled on the $30,000 of the insurance, and then they got stuck with a $50,000 bill. And then I watched something. The parents of the girl asked for a meeting after all was settled, for a meeting with the parents of the boy. They brought their checkbook. They says, what can we do to help? I want you to remember that story because I've remembered it. I want you to carry adequate insurance. Again, we'll talk about that in a second. Stay in control of the assets, do the right thing, and use personal assets if necessary. Don't create this legal structure so that you can hide behind it and and hurt and go out and hurt people. That is not what we're teaching this for. What I don't want is for a gavel to come down on your head and go, you will pay. I want you to be in control of the situation, not a judge in an imperfect legal system. Thank you for your hearts. This is heartfelt, and this is exactly why we do asset protection, but don't do it wrong. And I don't care if you do it for the wrong reasons, just don't do it wrong. Number one, a good asset protection plan always includes adequate liability insurance to pay for the damages that you might cause in your life. And a good asset protection plan allows you to do the right thing without it being forced on you by an imperfect legal system. I hope that makes sense. All right, how much should you carry? And I've struggled with this. I struggled with this for about 10 years to come up with the right solution. Is $1 million enough? Well, for some people. Is it too much? For some people. Is it inadequate? Here's the definition that I finally wrote into a textbook, and it took me weeks to come up with this. It says this: liability insurance should adequately cover yourself and your business for the reasonable damages that could occur in your normal life and business pursuits. And some of you, that's going to frustrate. Well, just tell me how much to carry. Well, I don't know anything about you and your life. Are you a chess player? Are you a motocross player? Are you running nuclear waste between state lines? What is it you're doing? I don't know. But assess it, and maybe have somebody else outside assess what you're doing. And look at what damages you could occur in your normal life, and then adequately protect yourself. And don't overkill, just adequately. So let me give you the best example I know. Okay, so when we left California, gosh, it's been 25 years ago, here was their policy limits. Liability insurance always comes spelled out kind of like this: 1535 or whatever. What that means is that policy will cover 15,000 bodily injury per person, 30,000 per accident. So the total, 3 people in one accident, it's only going to cover 30, and then the property damage. So it's spelled out in your insurance policy that way, 1535 or whatever the numbers are. That was the policy 25 years ago. Finally, this January 1st, it changed. Can I just tell you that $15,000 bodily insurance is inadequate. It won't cover a night stay in the hospital. Are you kidding me? If you have assets to protect, you're probably inadequate. So, so, and then this last year, yep, there's some average costs of medical bills, and set that aside. You know what that is. As effective January 1st, so 2.5 months ago, finally they increased their insurance rates. Don't carry state minimums. State minimums are completely inadequate if you have assets to protect. Carry a little bit more insurance. When I say carry adequate insurance, again, look around at what damages you could incur as a result of your actions and cover it. And then I added this little slide here. I think I added that last summit to give you some better definitions, things that I guess I didn't understand. Underinsured motorists, so I put those definitions. I'll let you go through those on your own. Fraudulent conveyance. What is fraud, and when is it too late to protect assets? What is the difference really between prudent planning and outright fraud? And how do you know the difference? Because this is probably the most complicated of all subjects in the legal world, is when can I do it, and when is it flat out too late? We've had people that have come to us all the time to say, my attorney won't help me because I'm in the middle of a lawsuit and I can't protect my assets. I can't do estate planning. I can't set up a corporation. I remember one guy that called me. He's in the middle of a lawsuit. He's been to 3 law firms and he can't protect his assets. He can't do estate planning. He can't do anything till the lawsuit's over. And so I said, well, tell me about the nature of the lawsuit. What's happening? He says, well, my tree fell over on my neighbor's fence, and I'm not going to fix it because I hate that neighbor. He's been mean to my wife. He's been mean to my kids, and I'm not going to fix it. I says, well, what's the chance he's going to prevail in the lawsuit? Oh, probably pretty good. Okay, so what is it that he wants? He wants me to clean up the tree and fix the fence. What would that cost? About $10,000. Okay, so what if we did... Let's do your estate planning on everything, but leave out maybe $15,000 because you're going to have some legal fees. And there probably ought to be a little slush fund. Do your estate plan on everything, but leave $15,000. But let's go ahead and protect the rest. Oh, I could do that. Okay, so let me help you with that. We've had physicians that at any one time have 2 or 3 lawsuits going on. Does that mean they can never do estate planning? No. But you have to understand, you can't do it with the intent to undermine a current lawsuit. And I put this definition in here as well. This is something that I wrote and in one of the textbooks that I did. And I want you to circle this page too. The effect of a proper asset protection plan is about lowering your financial profile. It's about reducing your taxes and discouraging lawsuits. It's not about secrecy and hiding assets or dodging taxes. It's not about that. Now, anonymity can come into place because it's part of a financial profile, but it's not about hiding things. It's not about, I'm considering divorcing my wife. I want to hide all my assets from her so she doesn't see what. No, we don't teach that. And unfortunately, some of the principles that we teach do work, but we're never going to teach them. If you call me up and say, okay, I'm considering divorcing my spouse, how do I protect all my assets? I won't help you. Sorry. I could, but I'm not going to. That would be unethical for me. Okay. A definition I want you to remember, and that is, what is fraudulent conveyance? It's a transaction made with the intent to hinder, and maybe it circled the word intent, to hinder, delay, defraud a creditor without receiving a reasonable equivalent value in exchange for the transfer obligation. Okay, that's fraud. Now, it's based on, remember the word intent. What's my intent for doing it? And every state's going to define that just a little bit differently, but that's the overall one that seems to work in almost every state. So how do they prove what your intent was? Well, based on the badges of fraud. And the indications that you were being fraudulent. What are those indications? Well, let's say you're driving your car and you hit somebody and you put them in the hospital, and then the next day you start transferring your assets. Well, that would be a badge of fraud. Deathbed creations. We've seen this happen over and over again on large estates where you get a $20 million estate. You've got an exemption up to $14 million. And all of a sudden, you start gifting things. You start setting up limited partnerships and LLCs and gifting through that and to double your exemptions and your gifting. And you start, well, that's a deathbed creation. And you would expect that the court would unwind it. And the Thompson case, the Strange case, you can't do that. The courts are going to unwind those things. After a debt is incurred, preparing for a divorce. You can't go into lots of credit card debt. Asset protection does work, but you can't do it as a deathbed kind of last minute type of thing. Prenuptial agreements, well-drafted limited partnerships, LLCs, those things can be helpful, but you can't do it last minute. Creating complete insolvency. If you create such a tight plan, you can't go down and buy a bottle of water at the convenience store without using corporate funds. You've created insolvency for yourself. If you can't pay your normal bills, if I took all the money out of the corporation and then say, oh, sorry, you can't pay the creditor, you've created insolvency. Those things are going to unwind your asset protection plan. Planning to default on a loan. I can't tell you how many people, when the real estate market crashed in 2007, I had so many people in 2008 and 9 and 10 go, okay, I just can't keep paying the mortgage on these. I'm upside down. I'm just going to default on the loan. But I personally signed on all these loans. How do I protect all my other stuff? And I can't help you with that because it's a personal guarantee. Transfers to insiders with fictitious consideration. So I'm in the middle of a lawsuit and I sell my house to my brother for $10. Okay. Got the $10, put it in my wallet with the promise that someday I'm going to buy it back for $10. Well, that's fictitious consideration. It's not fair and adequate. It would be unwound by a judge. So we can't do those types of things would be not all of the badges of fraud, but the major ones. My bottom line, my message here is don't commit fraud. Don't do things with the intent to hurt people. The best time to do estate planning, the best time to do asset protection is in calm waters, not in stormy seas. Now, that doesn't mean we can't do it, but we have to do it much more carefully than we would. And that, again, this is a very sensitive area of law. But my bottom line to you is don't commit fraud. Okay, so let's go back to this little slide that we had. Would it be okay if you set up a trust for your family and wills, powers of attorney, and you set up a corporation when it's needed, or an LLC when it's needed, or a family limited partnership? Yes. Or do those things. But remember, what are the key words? I want you to be wise, prudent, and responsible in all you do, in all that you do. And remember this too. If you're a Christian at all, know that there's, at least I've been able to find and identify 53 New Testament parables. Do you know that over half of them talk about money and stewardship? That gives me some little biblical endorsement to go ahead and, you know what, I'm going to do this. Not overkill, but I'm going to be wise, prudent, responsible. Thank you for the hearts.